I'm Eduard Lecha. I am a research fellow and research coordinator at CIDOC, the Barcelona Center of International Affairs, and I will be speaking on security cooperation in the Mediterranean region. Basically, when we look at the Mediterranean in this moment and we try to look at the possibilities for promoting regional cooperation, we have to take into account of 7 different trends that are characterizing this region. First, the fact that we have long-lasting conflicts, the most well-known one being the Arab-Israeli conflict, but there are 2 other ones which create many troubles when you try to promote regional cooperation. One is the Western Sahara, and this is polluting Moroccan-Algerian relations, but also regional integration in the Maghreb. And the other one is Cyprus, with conflicts not only between the Republic of Cyprus and Turkey, but with Cyprus being part of the EU. It also complicates security cooperation between the EU and NATO and the EU and Turkey. Then in the region, particularly in the last years, we see new forms of conflict, new forms of war even, and the most relevant case is the case of Syria since 2011, and particularly since it became a real civil war in 2012. Then what we are also witnessing is what we could call an increased security continuum between this region and other regions of the world. And the most classical example is the insecurities between the Maghreb and the Sahel. So when you have an insecurity problem in the Maghreb, this is likely to be reproduced or replicated in the Sahel, and similarly when you have troubles in the Sahel, the countries of the Maghreb suffer the consequences. In this region we also have, this is the 4th factor, competition among regional powers, which are trying to consolidate their role, or they are trying to increase it, and certainly this creates problems in this competition between those that are trying to recuperate some power at the expenses of those that already had it. What we see is a region where foreign international powers still have a lot to say. This is the case of the United States, which is still a Mediterranean power. We see, but what we are looking at is the fact that other countries or other global players have a greater say recently in Mediterranean affairs. That's the case of Russia, but to some extent also some of the emerging powers. What we witness also when we look at the domestic situation is dynamics of polarization and fragmentation in Middle East and North African societies. And this produces that sometimes governments have to focus too much on dealing with domestic affairs and have little time to focus on international cooperation. And finally, we are in a region where we have many institutions and frameworks trying to promote regional integration, but unfortunately none of them has succeeded in creating a positive dynamic. Basically what we are looking at is a region where there is fragmentation and interconnectedness, and which in the last years is experiencing some sort of regional chaos. So basically the main question should be how to bring some order to this regional chaos. Ideally the goal, the ultimate goal, the long-term goal should be to establish some sort of platform for regional dialogue first, then regional cooperation, and possibly regional integration at the very end. It would be something like a conference for security and cooperation in the Mediterranean, similar to the CSCE in Europe. The problem is that right now, with the conditions we have, with these 7 elements I mentioned, this looks as an unachievable goal, at least for the short term. However, I think that from an intellectual point of view, we have to start thinking on how such a framework should look like. And I think it should be pragmatic and gradualistic, so that's the basic idea of starting with dialogue as a first step, then, as I said, moving to cooperation and finally to regional integration, but not thinking that we could start with regional integration. I think this framework, or any attempt to move into that framework, should also be inclusive. It means it could not, when we're talking about the Mediterranean, it cannot only be dealt, or it cannot only be a framework for cooperation among the Mediterranean countries. When we are talking about security, and even more if we talk about security and defense, we have to take into account all the relevant actors, particularly if our goal is to de-escalate ongoing tension in the region. And that is where we need certainly the US, we need Russia, and to some extent also we need other regional powers like Iran and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And finally, so I said it should be pragmatic and gradualistic, it should be inclusive, it should also be complementary. We have, as I said, many institutions or many frameworks trying to promote cooperation and dialogue in the region. And we have, for instance, the Union for the Mediterranean, we have the Mediterranean Dialogue of NATO, we have plenty of bilateral cooperations that exist and produce some results. When we try to think, if we envisage some sort of regional platform to discuss about security and cooperation in the field of security, this would be a complement to those frameworks, which luckily, if we are in the right conditions that make it possible to have such a cooperation in the field of security, it will also have a positive impact on other regional integration strategies. So, to sum it up, we are in a very complex, fragmented, interconnected region. Trying to promote some sort of dialogue platform on security is a must. Yet we will not achieve it in the coming months, probably not even in the coming 2 or 3 years, but it should still be a goal, and trying to create the conditions that will make it happen.